Hey, welcome to the Drawing Room Experts. This is Zaib. I mean, should I call it the hotel room experts? I guess at this point. Um, but I'm trying to make the most of my time, to be honest, and use it to record a bunch of these things that have been in the pipeline for a long time, but I just couldn't really get a chance to get to them. Um, so yeah, just life gives you lemon, you know. So what are we talking about today? So um, what I particularly enjoy doing whenever I'm doing these podcasts is coming up with different episodes or ideas for episodes. I really enjoy tackling or creating a theme or threading uh, a needle between different ideas and trying to find some sort of similarity, identify what principle is that I'm trying to address or talk about, and then address them together as opposed to doing these two separate episodes. So trying to find what similarities I can identify between apparently different things. Uh, and in the same realm, thinking about you know the the challenger brand really got me to compare two really stark, um, almost with cult following, um, challenger brands that exist, at least in my immediate world that I am interested in. And I thought it would be really interesting to draw some sort of a scenario and try and address these two different things, different challenger brands, and see what similarities exist between the two. And what I feel like is the biggest loophole or drawback or the challenge of a challenger brand, because it's one thing, and I think in itself, and I don't think anybody will disagree with me on this. In itself, creating a challenger brand is an admirable act. It is an act that you can get behind. It's classic like underdog story where you have this underdog um, who wants to beat the big guy and replace and be the new guy, new kid on the block ideology. So that kind of like gives you the reasons to support the said challenger brand. So there's definitely, it starts from a really place of admiration, respect, and guts, honestly, because it takes a lot of guts, even if you have a lot of um, privileges to lean on to, but it still takes a lot of guts to create those or think about creating those or move in that direction of creating a challenger brand. In the same light, I couldn't help but think about these two different brands that I wanted to discuss. One being uh, All Elite Wrestling, a company founded by uh, son of a billionaire, uh, Tony Khan. For those who know, who are connected to the business world, they know Shahid Khan. Pretty well known in the motivational spheres of the diaspora that lives in the United States. They have these stories that, this guy came to the US with, change in his pocket and now he's a billionaire. So he's that guy. And then his son, Tony Khan, who founded this company called All Elite Wrestling. And it started out right at the cusp of COVID, um, right before COVID, actually. And then it kind of like got into its stride, trying to compete with WWE at the time, and still is, operational, and that's their motto, and that's their thing. That they're the challenger brand. They're the Pepsi to the Coca-Cola, as Tony likes to remind all of us when he mentions those things. So that's one challenger brand that I wanted to address. The other being Pakistan Tehreek Insaaf. Now, for those who know, that I'm not shy in talking about uh, PTI or politics in general. And I've done that several times over the course of this particular podcast and several episodes. So my views on PTI and Imran Khan and his politics shouldn't be a surprise to anybody else. But I just want to address them purely from a brand perspective and see where they excel and where are there similarities where they fall almost like sometimes embarrassingly short. Um, and when I was thinking about doing an episode on AEW, All Elite Wrestling, um, and I wanted to do this right out after WrestleMania had happened, or actually right before WrestleMania, I was thinking about how great storylines in the WWE have really made it more watchable, enjoyable, at least for me to be intrigued about what's going on. As I record this, there's Monday Night Raw going on somewhere in the country, and I'm pretty sure it must be trending on X. So initially, why I wanted to do a podcast on AEW and another one on AEW was to talk about the lacking that AEW had in terms of storyline and not. Let me take my words back. Not lacking in storyline, but lacking in convincing and uh, uh, storylines that really compelling storyline. Um, and I wanted to discuss that, and then soon after the whole, for people who watch wrestling, are aware of this, um, the whole thing with the elite uh, showing that video from All In from CM Punk, and that whole thing that they did right at the week of WrestleMania, and it became like a huge thing. Um, and I wanted to discuss that in that light, where it felt like it was just the wrong time to show competitive spirit when you have to acknowledge that your competitor is doing really well. That is WWE. They've been like selling out stadiums and arenas all across the world, and they have really engaged fans. So they have engaging storylines, so people are really interested in the product. Um, so there's no question about it. So at that time, for a competitive force to really kick in, trying to kick in the nuts, I felt like that was a wrong decision, and I wanted to discuss the the motivations and the challenges of a challenger brand in that light. But then, as you know, time passed by, and that time went away, and there were other things that came up, and then in the same light, I was thinking about PTI and Imran Khan at the time, and that got me thinking that wow, there seems to be a striking resemblance in how I approach both of these brands that I wanted to support. When I got pulled back into AEW, or pulled back into wrestling through AEW, I was really a fan of the product. I really was, and to an extent still am, rooting for the product, rooting for the company, because it's imperative. With competition makes great television, great content for people who like that sort of content. Lots of options out there, so it made sense, right? So I was really rooting for them. Um, Same with PTI. When PTI came about as a political force that was significant enough to talk about, people, myself included, were, and to an extent still am, rooting for PTI because it kind of like takes, it's a giant middle finger to what you perceive as the establishment or the status quo. Now, people might have different interpretation of whether they are the status quo or they are the established or not. We'll talk about it in some other time. I'm not in a mood to engage with those kind of things at this moment. But um, but I do know what people who don't like PTI, what I'm going to say in this podcast about the Challenger brand, they're gonna like it, I think. Um, so with that being said, AEW and PTI have a lot of first of all, Imran Khan, Tony Khan, there's a similarity right there. But in terms of what is a challenger brand and what sort of pressure a challenger brand has, which is unique, um, to itself and unique for just the challenger brand, not the brand that it's challenging. So automatically, you have the challenger brand that is held to a significantly higher standard than the incumbent. And the big reason for that is the challenger brand itself, because they put themselves, that's their selling point that they sell everybody on. And they say, well, you should watch me. You should watch this product. You should watch AEW. You should vote for PTI because we're different, because we're better, because we're giving you what these other companies or other the status quo promised to give you. In the WWE's case, they wanted to give you wrestling. They didn't give you wrestling. They gave a bunch of soap opera entertainment with minimal wrestling sprinkled on top. Now, one can argue that is their formula and it works, and because it is working now, but there has to be a healthy balance between the wrestling and the storylines. But I digress. So AEW came in and like, hey, we're better than WWE because we're going to give you better matches. We're going to give you wrestling matches. We're going to give you dream matches. We're going to bring on, some really cool superstars on the roster and make it your worthwhile. You're going to want to spend the money, and then you're going to root for us because we're fighting the big guy, the big bad wolf in WWE. And then obviously WWE wasn't going through their best period, and they were not engaging as a product. People didn't like them. It was just, dull and boring. And then you would have WrestleMania to just top it off. And then people went back to doing their thing and then didn't pay attention to their product at all. Now it's completely different, by the way. But so they put that pressure on themselves because they brand themselves as such. They brand themselves as the alternative. PTI did the same thing. They branded themselves as the alternative. Then what is the mistake that they end up making, both PTI and AEW? Because they brand themselves as the alternative, they automatically put that pressure on themselves to be held to higher standards, because they can't say, AEW cannot say that, well, we don't have an engaging storyline because, well, WWE didn't have it either a couple of years ago. So we don't have it right now. It's a cycle. We're going to have an engaging storyline down the line. So what? You can't say that because you pulled in the audience, or you wanted to pull in a larger amount of the audience, non-internet, non-mark audience, on the promise that you're going to deliver on the entertainment part and the wrestling part, and strike that balance, make it more engaging. People that were watching wrestling actively, they were lacking, or they were missing those things. So they can't really go and change the goalpost right when the going gets tough, and that's what they do. So immediately, you have that pressure, and then what that pressure does, is that it really, really has an impact on the integrity of the brand. That's my understanding of it. When you promise, Rose Garden, when you promise that, hey, if I get the government and I'm going to change things and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, you use a lot of bloated terms, and then you go above and beyond to show these amazing dreams to people, and then when people buy into it, and then when they vote you in and they don't see that immediately, and again, that's also unreasonable to expect to see that immediately, but let's just ignore that for a second. But if the people don't see it over an extended period of time, they lose faith on the challenger brand. And what it does is that it has an impact on the challenger brand itself, because I can't say challenger brand, because the challenger brand loses its integrity. They lose its claim to fame, its USP, and then they start losing the audience. And then when they lose the audience, they lose faith. And when they lose faith, the very reason why you created the challenger brand, you end up empowering the status quo because of your stupidity, because of your naivety, or because of your blunders that you make. And what it does is that people lose faith, and they're like, you know what? Maybe things aren't supposed to change in my lifetime. Fuck that. I'm just gonna go back to the camps of PPP and PMLN, and just, at least I have, at least that staple. I'm used to it. I'm used to them stabbing me in the front, stabbing me in the back. Stabbing me all over the place. I'll just go back to that. Screw you and screw your new party, because you promised, these rose gardens and weren't able to deliver. Um, Same with AEW. They came in hot, took advantage of WBE's downfall at the time, brought in a lot of superstars, brought in CM Punk. That's how I got pulled into the product. Um, and then you do stupid shit like, you know, uh, what you heard, the CM Punk interview on ESPN about Tony Khan not being a boss and not really putting a stamp and not really stopping the backroom politics, and then involving outside journalists, so-called journalists, and they creating this shitty and toxic environment at the back, and then causing outbursts and then fights and a lot of infighting, politics, and that really impacts the brand. People stop focusing on the brand and the product, and they start focusing on bullshit that goes on behind the scenes. And then on top of that, your storylines suck. I mean, just a recent example. I mean, again, I'm going really deep into my wrestling knowledge and my interest right now, so bear with me. Whoever is listening, I know a lot of them maybe not really wrestling fans, but trying to understand this. You have a champion that you've crowned, of the first African American champion in AEW. So AEW crowns an African American champion. Super hot. He's people are behind him. They love him. They wanted him to be champion. The pay per view before this, before the one that he actually became champion, but they skipped on him and then eventually made him. But it wasn't too late. It wasn't like disappointing to an extent where you would feel like they missed the boat on it, but they didn't. So they pulled the trigger. They pulled the trigger at the reasonable time, and you have this amazing opportunity to really build off of that because he's hot. People are interested in him. Really dive into his storyline and make him more relatable, like WWE does with Cody Rhodes. They made him more of like people love him, and they made a big deal of him coming out. Sometimes he would never even you know pull up his boots. He would not wrestle. He would just talk on the mic, and he would still pull in the crowd. A record number of rating on TV. What Cody Rhodes would do that. So they had a similar situation here, AEW. Now, I'm not expecting a new company to not make mistakes, not make blunders. That's fine. It happens. Sometimes inexperience gets to you. But to make an error like they did with Swerve Strickland, where right after the pay-per-view, when he wins the title, the next time he's on their show, everybody thought he's going to be treated like, with white gloves. He's going to be treated like a champion. He's going to come in and parade, and he's going to build. You're going to double down on him. People are going to love him and all of that stuff. They put him in a meaningless match against an absolute nobody, which the match did not serve Swerve's character arc. The match did not serve the other guy's character arc one little bit. Didn't advance any story. Made him look really, really bad, as a champion, because you come and there's no need. Like, there was absolutely no need. So when you do some stupid shit like that, and I'm looking on and I'm hearing about it, I don't watch the product too actively, but I do hear about it, and I stay close and connected to it and see what's going on. When I see that, and I'm like, fucking hell, guys, what are you doing? And that's what hurts the brand, the challenger brand. And then what it does is, if you're purely thinking from Imran Khan's eyes, or Tony Khan's eyes, if I'm talking just to them right now or their supporters, it empowers the enemy that you think they are. It empowers the enemy that you're fighting against, WB and the PPP and PLN, respectively, because you do stupid shit like that. Again, not expecting you to not make mistakes or errors and judgments. That's fine. But those kind of errors, mistakes are childish. And even for someone like me who's not in the business, I'm not a an extreme wrestling fan who knows how to book, and I'm not a technical guy. But even I was like, fucking hell, that is unbelievable. So when the challenger brand does something like that, it really hurts the challenger brand, and then also empowers the very monster that they're trying to fight, in WB, and the status quo in Pakistani politics. So challenger brand, being a challenger brand is scary. And that's why I said, I mentioned that I have massive respect for people who um, want to have a challenger brands type situation going on for them. I respect that. But when you are in that position, it's a very privileged position to be in, where you can use your influence to um, bring about amazing change in the industry that you're in, politics, what have you. So it's a very privileged position. So if you misuse it, I think that is the fear that sometimes keeps people up at night, where they don't want to engage in being the challenger brand, because it just comes with that much responsibility. And I get the the strength that these people have to be the challenger brand, Imran Khan and Tony Khan, but I just wish they understood the gravity of the responsibility that they also have on their shoulders, so they don't pull stupid stunts like what I just described, or what Imran Khan does or did at the time, where he would just say stupid shit or have stupid people represent him in the party, which are no brainers. For like, why would you have that guy in your party? Why would you do that? Why would you? Well, why? Those kind of stupid mistakes where you feel like these are unforced errors, as you would want to, refer to purely sporting terminology. So, it comes in with its own challenges and responsibilities. Um, but yeah, I found that really interesting. I hope you guys did too, because when you look at it from that angle, it really resonates why, it's imperative, it's important that challenger brands, if they're fighting for the right cause, if they're fighting the right fight, they have to be extra careful, even more careful than their enemies or their competition, because if they lose, it's all over. It's not just over for them, but for everybody else around that, because then they are submitting to and making the monopoly even more powerful, making the status quo establishment even more powerful. So what's better, to not making the establishment powerful, or making them powerful? Obviously not making them powerful. What's better, having a trashy alternative challenger brand, which makes and puts legitimacy on the incumbent WWE more, or not having a challenger brand, and then at least people can say, hey, WB is trashy. Now they can't, because the alternative is even trashier. So, so you know, people people with those kind of like people in those positions have to really, really think hard about the privilege that they're in, and what kind of impact that privilege has. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on Instagram and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and a bunch of other podcasting platforms. We're on it, all of them. So leave us a rating, makes it easier for other people to discover the show. And I guess the hotel room experts will continue some other time. Thanks. Bye.